In the second part of the tutorial, I will continue explaining how to add Java plugins to Where I Am. At the end of the first part of the tutorial, we have created the Eclipse project for all our plugins and created a package for all our plugins. Now we need to define the code for our function that converts a string into uppercase. As I explained before, we need to add the Java class that will implement an Where I Am interface. In Where I Am, all functions are organized in libraries, so we need to create a function library. We can add other functions to this library later. So in this particular case, the interface that our class must implement is called iFunctionLibrary. So we create a new Java class and give it a name, for example, myFunctionLibrary. To make sure that the class implements the iFunctionLibrary interface, we click on the Add button and type iFunctionLibrary as an interface to implement. Note that Eclipse immediately prompts us about the interfaces it knows about. Since we added Where I Am jar files, it knows about the interfaces that Where I Am provides. So now we have added iFunctionLibrary and we click on the Finish button. And now we can see that Eclipse has automatically created the skeleton of the code that we need to implement. This is one of the beauties of using Eclipse. So let's look at this skeleton code in detail. First, it declares the package where the class belongs. Let's ignore the import statements for the time being. Next, there is the declaration of the class itself. We'll ignore the public keyword for now. Here we can see the name of our class and the fact it implements the iFunctionLibrary interface. What follows is the declaration of all methods that the iFunctionLibrary interface defines. Note that we cannot change the signature of these methods because this signature is mandated by the interface. The signature of methods includes the name of the method, the type and number of parameters of the method, and the return type of the method. We cannot change any of these, otherwise our plugin will not work. What we need to do is provide implementation for these methods. Note that Eclipse has provided some default implementation of the methods, which basically does nothing. We need to provide proper implementation instead. So we will go through the methods one by one and provide the implementation. The first method is calculate. This is really the key method of the interface, and it is supposed to do all the important work. Where I Am calls this method whenever it encounters a function in a rule. So this method is supposed to return a value calculated by a particular function called with the particular parameters. Other methods are just some additional methods that Where I Am needs for different purposes. So let's look at this method in detail. When generating the skeleton of the method, Eclipse knows the number and type of each parameter, but it does not know what these parameters mean. So it named them arg0, arg1, arg2, etc. I know better what they mean, and so I will rename these parameters. You can look this up in the programmer's reference guide actually. So the first parameter is the name of the function being called. The second parameter represents the array of parameters of the function call. And we shouldn't worry about the third one for now. Note that I'm allowed to change parameter names, but not types. Also note that this plugin is supposed to implement a library of functions, not an individual function. In our case, the library will have just one function for now, but we can add more later. This is why the name of the function being called is provided as a parameter of the method. Because there may be more functions in the library later on, the first thing we do is check whether the provided function name corresponds to our function. I will use to uppercase 2 as the name of our function, because we already have to uppercase function in a where I am. So if it is our function, we need to extract the string that is given to us to be converted to the uppercase. We expect the string to be a parameter of the function as the first and only parameter. But we cannot rely on the fact that the developer writing a rule did everything correctly. So before we extract the string, we need to check that parameters passed to the functions are okay. Parameters of the function call are specified in the second method parameter. It is an array of objects. An object can be anything in Java. All Java objects inherit from the object class, so it can be a string, a date, a number, anything. What we expect is that the array is defined, not null, and that its length is at least 1, and that the type of the first member of the array is string. If this is not the case, we will refuse to do anything and throw an exception. So let's write it down. So if parameters are null or its length is not equal to 1 and the type of the first parameter is not string, then we are throwing in an exception. And if everything is alright, we can cast the first parameter to the string object. So now we need to convert this string to uppercase and return the resulting string. Luckily, Java string object already has a method to do just that, and we can use this method here. That's it. Our most important method is ready. I have just realized now that I made a small mistake here. It should be or here instead of and. Alright, the next method that we need to provide is called getAvailableFunctions. This method is automatically called by a where I am in the context assistant when it displays the description of the function to the developer. Our method is supposed to return an array of special objects called function description that describes what the function does. One function description per function. Since our library has only one function, we need to return an array of 1. So we create an instance of the function description object. And when we create it, we specify 2 parameters, the name of our function and the description of the function. It is this description that the context assistant will show. Now we need to return the instance of function description as part of an array of 1. The next method is called getName. It is supposed to return a unique name of the library, so we just return some unique name here. The next method is getRequiredFactPatterns. Don't worry about this method and leave the default implementation that returns null. The next method is getTypeClass. It is supposed to return the class types of the objects that functions of the library return. Remember that a function may return different types: string, number, date, and so on. A where I am needs to know the type returned by each function. We only have one function for now, and it returns string, so we will return the string class type here. The next method is called hasFunction. For each function that a where I am encounters in a rule, it needs to know which function library has the implementation of this function. So for each library it knows about, a where I am asks the library whether a function with this name and these parameters is available in the library. So we need to return a boolean indicating whether we recognize a function with a particular name and a number of parameters. The first parameter of this function is the name of the function, and the second parameter is the number of parameters. So if it's our function and the number of parameters is 1, then we return true. The library does have this function. The last method, toSQL, should only be provided if we want our function to work properly if used in queries. We won't worry about this method for now and leave the default implementation. And that's it. We have written the code for our plugin. Now we need to integrate it in where-I-am. Another beauty of using Eclipse is that it automatically compiles the code when the code is saved. So if we go to the folder of our project under the Eclipse directory, this is our project, where-I-am plugins, and we go to the bin directory, and here we have the class file of our plugin. As you remember, we now need to put this class file into a jar archive. To do this, we need to use the jar.exe utility from our JDK. So I have started the DOS command prompt and navigated to the Eclipse where-I-am plugins bin directory, which is the root directory of our class files. Now we will add the files into the jar archive by using the following command. This will add all class files to the archive called mycompany.jar. So we run this command, and when we go to the bin directory, we can see the jar file created in this bin directory. Now we need to make the Java environment used by where-I-am aware of this jar file by putting it on a class path. A where-I-am class path refers to the special directory called where-I-am custom jars. If we put any jar file into this special directory, where-I-am's Java environment will be aware of this jar file when where-I-am starts up. So we create this directory if it hasn't been created before and put our jar file there. This is our where-I-am environment, and we have the directory custom jars, so I'll just copy the file there. The last thing we need to do is add a reference to our library to the where-I-am bin busserver.props file. A reference to a function library can be made by adding a property that starts with function library. The value of the property should specify the fully qualified name of the class that implements the library. So in our case, we need to add this. Function library test, and it can be any name after function library, and then we specify the fully qualified name of the library. Now we need to restart where-I-am for these changes to take effect. If everything has been done correctly, our function should appear in the list of functions in the context assistant. So here I have restarted where-I-am, and if we go to the rules of the company object, and this is the list of functions, we scroll down to the end of the list, and here we go. We can see our toUpperCase2 function in the list of functions. That means that our plugin has been integrated correctly. And now we can use this function in the rule. For example, if company name was changed, then company name equals toUpperCase2 from company name. This converts the company name that the user has entered to uppercase. So we have explained how to add a function plugin to where-I-am. In the third and final part of the tutorial, we will explain how to add a process plugin.